The courtroom felt too small for the lie he was telling. I have disclosed all assets to the best of my knowledge, Henry said smoothly, one hand resting on the Bible, the other adjusting the cufflinks I bought him for our 10th anniversary. His lawyer nodded, confident and relaxed. $10.5 million didn't just vanish. I felt the blood drain from my face as his financial affidavit slid across the table. Savings, modest. Investments, minimal. Crypto holdings, none. After 15 years of marriage. After I supported him through 3 failed startups. After I co-signed loans. After I emptied my retirement account to keep us afloat. He refused to meet my eyes. But I had seen the notifications. Late-night pings. Encrypted emails. Hardware wallets delivered in discreet packaging. And the night he thought I was asleep, whispering on the balcony about moving it before discovery. He believed cryptocurrency was invisible. Untouchable. Beyond the court's reach. What he didn't know was that I'd quietly started screenshotting everything 6 months earlier. The digital trail he thought he erased wasn't as invisible as he thought. My name is Claire Morrison, and I'm a high school art teacher. Nothing about my life prepared me for sitting in divorce court, listening to the man I married at 23 lie under oath. The judge, a woman with sharp eyes, leaned forward. Mr. Morrison, this is your final opportunity to disclose all marital assets. Do you have any cryptocurrency holdings? Henry's voice didn't waver. No, Your Honor. None. My stomach turned. I'd seen the wallet confirmations myself. Portfolio value flashing on his phone screen. $10.5 million. The number was burned into my memory. The affidavit hit the table. According to it, our 15 years together amounted to barely 6 figures. My teacher's pension. Our aging Toyota. The house with its second mortgage. I locked eyes with him for the first time that morning. And he smirked. That tiny curl of his lip told me everything. He thought he'd won. I leaned close to my attorney, Frank Anderson, and whispered 5 words. He just committed perjury. Frank's eyebrows rose slightly, but he kept his expression neutral. He'd been my lawyer for 3 months, ever since I finally gathered courage to file for divorce. 38, I was starting over. No kids, thankfully. Just a shattered marriage and a husband who thought I was too naive to notice his schemes. For years, I trusted Henry completely. He handled our finances while I focused on teaching. He said he was protecting our future, with investments I didn't understand. I believed him. But 6 months ago something changed. Small things at first. The way he angled his phone away when I entered rooms. Packages arriving that he claimed were work equipment. Conversations ending abruptly. Then came the balcony call. Frank tapped his pen against his notepad, a signal we'd established. He believed me. Now we just needed proof that would hold up in court. Henry's lawyer was already packing up, confident. My husband stood, straightening his expensive suit. The same suit he claimed we couldn't afford when I needed new tires last winter. I stayed seated, my secret evidence waiting in Frank's locked briefcase. The memory of that night was seared into my brain. Late February, around 2 in the morning. I'd woken up and noticed our balcony door cracked open, letting in cold air. I heard Henry's voice, low and urgent. Move it before discovery, he was saying. Cold storage. She'll never trace it. Claire's clueless about this stuff. My heart pounded. I stood frozen in darkness, barely breathing. The lawyer said they can't find what they can't see, he continued. Hardware wallet. No exchange trail after I transfer it. She gets the teacher's pension, I keep the real money. I grabbed my phone with shaking hands. My fingers found the voice recording app. I pressed record and held it toward the balcony. Trust me, this is foolproof, Henry said. Blockchain is anonymous. Even if she hires someone, crypto is untraceable. I'll wait until after the divorce, then I'm set for life. He laughed. Actually laughed. I stopped the recording and slipped back into bed, pretending sleep when he came inside. My mind raced. I didn't understand crypto then, but I decided that night I would learn everything about it. The next morning I acted normal. Made coffee. Asked about his day. He kissed my forehead like nothing happened. But everything had changed. I started researching. During lunch breaks at school, I watched YouTube videos about cryptocurrency and blockchain. I learned about wallets, exchanges, cold storage. Terms that meant nothing a week ago became my focus. That's when I looked back at something I dismissed months earlier. In November, Henry's phone kept buzzing with notifications while he showered. I'd glanced at the screen. Coinbase alerts. Multiple ones. Large transaction amounts. I remembered one clearly. Portfolio update. $10,487,392. At the time I thought it was spam or example accounts. Henry had always claimed his crypto investments were small. Just playing around. A few $1,000s at most, he'd said. Now I knew better. I went through my own phone, hoping I'd accidentally captured something. And there, in my photos from that day, was a blurry shot of our bathroom mirror. In the reflection, barely visible, was his phone screen on the counter. I zoomed in. The Coinbase portfolio page was clear. $10.5 million. My hand shook as I stared at the photo. This was real. Henry had hidden over $10 million while I worked overtime to pay bills. I immediately created a new Gmail account he'd never know about. ClaireEvidence2024@gmail.com. I forwarded the photo to myself, then downloaded it to a USB drive I bought at the drugstore. From that moment on, I became a detective in my own marriage. Every time Henry left his phone unattended, I checked it. I photographed everything. Exchanged notifications. Wallet addresses. Even a note listing something called seed phrases, with warnings to keep offline. I didn't know what seed phrases meant yet, but I photographed those too. February turned into March. I kept teaching, kept smiling, kept pretending I believed his stories about tight money and rough months. Meanwhile, my secret email filled with evidence. Henry got sloppy. Maybe he thought I was too trusting. Maybe he'd always been this careless and I just hadn't been paying attention. Either way, his confidence would become his biggest mistake. In late March, I confronted him. Not about the crypto, not yet. Just about suspicious spending. Henry, where did the $3,000 go from our joint account? I asked one evening. The statement says ATM withdrawal. But you never mentioned it. His face darkened. That's for the business, Claire. You know I'm working on the new startup. Which startup? I thought the last one closed. This is different. You wouldn't understand the technical side. Try me. He stood up, frustrated. Look, I handle the finances. That's always been our arrangement. Stop questioning every little thing. But I wasn't questioning every little thing. I was questioning $10 million. A week later, the Coinbase app disappeared from his phone. When I asked about his crypto investments, he sighed dramatically. I actually lost most of it, he said. Bad market timing. That's why I didn't want to worry you. Probably down to nothing by now. He was lying. I could see it in the way he wouldn't meet my eyes. And I knew something he didn't. Blockchain doesn't forget. Every transaction is recorded permanently. I just needed help finding it. That's when I hired Frank Anderson. A colleague's sister had gone through a difficult divorce and recommended Frank, saying he was thorough and didn't back down from complicated cases. Our first meeting was early April. I sat in his modest office, my folder of screenshots and audio recording on a USB drive in my purse. Tell me everything, Frank said. I did. The balcony call. The portfolio screenshots. Henry's sudden claim that he'd lost it all. Frank listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. This is financial fraud, he finally said. If he's hiding assets during divorce proceedings, that's illegal. But cryptocurrency cases are tricky. We'll need an expert. He pulled out his phone. Veronica? Frank Anderson. I have a case you'll want to hear about. 3 days later, I met Veronica Hayes in Frank's office. She was younger than I expected, maybe 35, with bright red hair and intense focus. She specialized in crypto forensics. I showed her my screenshots. She studied them in silence, fingers flying across her laptop. Finally, she looked up. He moved it to cold storage, but he left footprints, she said. People always do. Then she asked, did you ever see a hardware wallet? I thought hard. A hardware wallet. Veronica explained it was a small device like a USB drive that stores cryptocurrency offline. I'm not sure, I admitted. What would it look like? She showed me photos. Small devices about thumb drive size. Brands like Ledger and Trezor. Something clicked. Wait. Last month, Henry went to the bank. He said it was for a business meeting, but it seemed strange. Could he have a safe deposit box? Veronica and Frank exchanged glances. Can you get bank records? Veronica asked Frank. With a court order, yes. 2 weeks later, we had the records. Henry had opened a safe deposit box at First National Bank on March 15th, just 3 weeks before filing for divorce. The box was in his name only. Frank filed a motion for temporary access. The hearing was quick. The judge, suspicious of the timing, granted the order. Henry's lawyer objected loudly. This is a violation of privacy, personal property. But the judge wasn't swayed. If there are marital assets in that box, Mrs. Morrison has a right to know. Motion granted. Henry's face went pale. The day we opened the safe deposit box felt surreal. Henry, his lawyer Frank, Veronica, and I crowded into the small private room at the bank. A bank manager supervised. The tension was thick. Henry's hand shook as he unlocked the box. He tried to block our view, but the manager moved him aside. Inside, business documents, an envelope with cash, and a small black device. Veronica's eyes lit up. That's a Ledger Nano X hardware wallet. Those are my private belongings. Henry protested. Frank calmly pulled out the court order. Under investigation for marital assets. Everything gets documented. The bank manager photographed the contents. Veronica bagged the hardware wallet. There was also a small notebook with random words written down. Seed phrases, Veronica later explained. The keys to access the crypto. This is insane, Henry said. You're violating my rights. I stayed silent. Inside I was screaming. This device held the proof I needed. His lawyer kept objecting, but the judge had been clear. Forensic imaging was ordered. Henry cornered me in the hallway afterward. You're making a huge mistake, Claire. Am I? I met his glare without flinching. Because it seems like you're the one who made the mistake. You don't understand what you're doing, he hissed. This is going to ruin both of us. I think it's just going to ruin you. He changed tactics, his voice dropping to something almost pleading. Claire, listen. That crypto, it's not what you think. It belongs to an investor group. I'm just holding it for them. If you keep pushing this, you'll destroy innocent people's investments. I almost laughed. An investor group? Really? I'm serious. The wallet isn't mine. I'm managing it for partners in the startup. This is all a misunderstanding. Frank appeared at my elbow. Mr. Morrison, please don't speak to my client without counsel present. Henry shot me one last desperate look before walking away. I turned to Frank. He's lying about the investor group, right? Almost certainly. Veronica will trace the wallet history. If it's really group funds, there will be documentation, contracts, partnership agreements, tax filings. He smiled slightly. If it's his personal wallet, that will be obvious too. Veronica called me the next morning. Claire, you need to hear this. I was in my classroom during planning period. I stepped into the hallway. What did you find? Remember that email you forwarded me? From last summer. I did. It was from June. Henry had sent me an email at work with the subject line, "We're set for life." The email was short. Claire, check this out. All the risk finally paid off. We'll never have to worry about money again. Attached was a screenshot of a crypto wallet. The same wallet address I'd seen on his phone. Balance. $10.5 million. What about it? I asked. He literally sent you proof that the wallet is his. Not an investor group. Not a business account. He said we're set, meaning you and him. He tied himself directly to that wallet. My heart raced. Can we use this in court? Absolutely. He documented his own ownership. This is exactly what we needed. Frank filed an amended motion, attaching the email as evidence. The case was building piece by piece. But Veronica had uncovered something else that would blow the case wide open. He never reported the capital gains, Veronica said during our next meeting. She spread printouts across Frank's conference table. I pulled what I could from blockchain records and cross-referenced with your timeline. He made significant profits, Claire. Millions in gains. Not a single tax form filed. Frank whistled low. That's tax evasion. Wait, I said. He files our taxes every year. He filed your joint income, Veronica explained. Your teacher salary, his small business expenses. But the crypto gains? Nothing. The IRS has no record of any of it. The implications hit me slowly. So he committed tax fraud too? Looks that way. Frank tapped his pen thoughtfully. We have an obligation to inform the court. And depending on how the judge views this, it could mean informing the IRS. Henry's house of lies was collapsing. Frank filed another motion detailing the unreported gains. The judge scheduled an emergency hearing for the following week. The day before the hearing, Henry's lawyer called Frank with a settlement offer. $500,000, Frank told me. He wants you to drop the crypto claim entirely. Sign an NDA. Walk away. $500,000 out of $10.5 million. Absolutely not, I said. The emergency hearing was packed. Word had gotten out about the case. Several law students sat in the back, notebooks open. Henry's lawyer tried to argue the crypto evidence was circumstantial, that the hardware wallet could belong to anyone, that my screenshots were out of context. Then Veronica took the stand. She explained blockchain technology in simple terms. Every transaction creates a permanent record. Every wallet has a unique address. Every movement of funds can be traced. I tracked the wallet in question, Veronica testified. It shows a deposit of $10.5 million from a Coinbase account registered to Henry Morrison. That transfer occurred on March 8th of this year. The judge leaned forward, interested. Veronica continued. The wallet address matches the one in the email Mr. Morrison sent to Mrs. Morrison last June. It also matches the address stored in the hardware wallet recovered from his safe deposit box. She pulled up a chart on a laptop connected to the courtroom display. Transaction history, wallet addresses, timestamps. Everything connected. And here's the critical detail, Veronica said. Every transaction from that Coinbase account originated from an IP address that traces back to the Morrison home residence. The courtroom went quiet. Even Henry's lawyer looked stunned. The judge adjusted her glasses, studying the blockchain records. Mr. Morrison, I'm going to ask you one more time, and I suggest you consider your answer carefully. Henry stood, his confidence finally cracking. Sweat beaded on his forehead. Do you still maintain that you have no cryptocurrency assets? The silence stretched on. 5 seconds. 10 seconds. Henry opened his mouth, closed it, looked at his lawyer. His lawyer gave a tiny shake of his head, but it was too late. The wallet. It's complicated, Your Honor. Yes or no, Mr. Morrison? There might be some assets, but... Stop. The judge held up her hand. You've already testified under oath that you had no crypto holdings. You signed a financial affidavit stating the same. Now, faced with evidence, you're changing your story. Henry's face went red. I was trying to protect. You were trying to commit fraud. The judge's voice was ice. I find probable cause for contempt of court. Additionally, this court will issue an emergency asset freeze on all identified cryptocurrency wallets pending further investigation. Henry's lawyer stood quickly. Your Honor, we request. Request denied. The judge signed an order. All wallets associated with Mr. Morrison are frozen effective immediately. The asset freeze went into effect at 4:47 p.m. that afternoon. At 4:52 p.m., according to Veronica's monitoring, someone tried to transfer funds from Henry's wallet. She called me immediately. He just attempted to move the crypto. What? But the freeze. The freeze was issued, but there's a small window before it propagates through the system. He tried to be smart. He failed. The attempted transfer triggered automatic alerts. Veronica had set up monitoring on the wallet addresses. The moment any movement was detected, the system flagged it. What happens now? I asked. This gets reported to the judge. Attempting to violate a court order? That's serious, Claire. Really serious. The next day, Frank filed an emergency motion detailing the attempted transfer. The judge called another hearing for that afternoon. This time she was visibly angry. Mr. Morrison, did you attempt to transfer cryptocurrency assets after this court issued a freeze order? Henry's lawyer tried to argue technical difficulties. Maybe it was a delayed transaction. Maybe automatic. Maybe a mistake. The judge wasn't buying it. The timestamp shows the transfer attempt occurred 5 minutes after my order. That's not a coincidence. She added sanctions. Henry would be responsible for all legal fees. She also ordered him to surrender all passwords, seed phrases, and access codes within 24 hours. Any further attempts to move or hide assets will result in jail time for contempt, she warned. Henry left the courthouse looking 10 years older. Over the next week, the full picture emerged. Veronica dug deeper into the blockchain history. She found something I hadn't known. Henry had been building this crypto portfolio for nearly 5 years. Small investments at first, then larger ones. He'd gotten lucky with a few coins that exploded in value. He started with maybe $50,000, Veronica explained. Made smart picks. The portfolio grew to over 10 million. All while telling me we were struggling financially. All while I worked extra tutoring sessions to help pay bills. All while he claimed we couldn't afford vacations or repairs or anything beyond basics. The betrayal cut deeper than the money itself. Frank presented all the evidence to the court. The email where Henry bragged about being set for life. The blockchain records showing he controlled the wallet. The tax documents proving he never reported the gains. The audio recording of him planning to hide assets. Henry's confidence had completely evaporated. His lawyer looked exhausted. His business partners started distancing themselves. Word had spread about the case. Nobody wanted to be associated with someone who'd committed perjury and tax evasion. The walls were closing in. Then came the letter from the IRS. Henry received formal notice of an investigation into unreported capital gains. The court had forwarded our evidence. Federal tax authorities don't mess around with millions in unreported income. I heard through Frank that Henry had hired a tax attorney. Another expense he couldn't afford now that his accounts were frozen. He was burning through the limited funds the court allowed him for living expenses. Meanwhile, his earlier arrogance had been replaced by desperation. He requested mediation through his lawyer. Perhaps we can settle this reasonably, the request read. Frank showed me the request with raised eyebrows. What do you think? I think he's panicking, I said. But I'm willing to listen. The mediation was scheduled for the following week. We met in a neutral conference room. Henry couldn't even look at me at first. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet. I'll give you 40% of the crypto, he offered. And we can split the other assets 50-50. I remained silent. Frank had taught me the power of waiting. Henry continued. Claire, this is fair. I built that portfolio. The work I put in. With money from our marriage, I cut in. While I supported us. Frank slid a paper across the table. My client's position is 70% of the cryptocurrency portfolio plus full legal fees. Given the perjury, the tax evasion, and the attempted asset dissipation, we believe that's more than fair. Henry stood up so fast his chair fell over. That's insane. We're trying to make things equitable, Frank said calmly. You hid assets. You lied under oath. You tried to cheat your wife out of marital property. These are the consequences. Henry grabbed his jacket. We're done here. He stormed out. I felt oddly calm. This wasn't about revenge. It was about what was right. The final hearing was scheduled for late June. 3 months after Henry's confident lies in the courtroom. 3 months of evidence gathering, forensic analysis, and watching his schemes unravel. I wore a navy blue dress. Simple. Professional. I wanted the judge to see me as I was. A teacher who'd been betrayed, not a vengeful ex-wife. The courtroom was fuller than before. The case had attracted attention in legal circles. A textbook example of cryptocurrency in divorce proceedings. The judge entered and we all stood. She'd reviewed everything, the financial affidavits, the blockchain evidence, the audio recording, the email, the attempted transfer, the tax issues. Every piece of Henry's deception. I've carefully considered all evidence and testimony, she began. This case represents one of the most clear-cut examples of intentional asset concealment I've encountered in 20 years on the bench. Henry stared at the table. Mr. Morrison committed perjury. He attempted to hide over $10 million in marital assets. He failed to report substantial capital gains to the IRS. And after this court issued a freeze order, He attempted to move those assets anyway. The judge looked directly at him. Your conduct has been dishonest, calculating, and frankly, insulting to this court and to your wife of 15 years. She outlined her ruling. I held my breath. I am awarding Mrs. Morrison 65% of the cryptocurrency portfolio, the judge announced. That amounts to approximately $6.8 million at current valuation. My heart pounded. 65%. Additionally, Mr. Morrison will be responsible for all legal fees incurred by Mrs. Morrison. That includes attorney fees, forensic analysis, and court costs. She wasn't finished. I am also imposing sanctions of $50,000 for contempt of court and attempted asset dissipation. Finally, I am noting for the record that the IRS has been notified of the unreported gains. That matter is outside this court's jurisdiction, but I wanted it stated clearly. Henry's head dropped into his hands. The unequal distribution of assets is a direct result of Mr. Morrison's dishonesty and bad faith throughout these proceedings, the judge continued. Had he been forthcoming from the beginning, the division would likely have been 50-50. His choices have consequences. She banged her gavel. This court is adjourned. I stood on shaky legs. Frank smiled and squeezed my shoulder. You did it. Veronica, sitting behind us, gave me a thumbs up. Henry walked out without looking at anyone. Outside the courthouse, I breathed in the summer air. It was over. Frank handed me a folder with the court orders. You'll need to work with Veronica to transfer your portion of the crypto into secure accounts. I recommend diversifying. I will, I promised. I felt lighter than I had in months. The fallout happened quickly. Within a week, 2 of Henry's startup investors pulled out. They'd heard about the court case and didn't want to be associated with someone under IRS investigation. The startup collapsed. I heard he'd moved into a small apartment across town. The house, part of the marital assets, had been sold. My portion of that sale added another $150,000 to my settlement. Meanwhile, I worked with Veronica and a financial advisor to diversify my crypto holdings. We converted most to traditional investments. Stocks, bonds, real estate. I kept a small amount in cryptocurrency, but I'd learned my lesson about putting all eggs in one basket. I set up a trust, funded my retirement properly, even started a scholarship fund for art students at my school. My lawyer bills were paid in full from Henry's sanctions and legal fee obligations. Every penny he tried to hide had come back to haunt him. The IRS investigation continued. I knew Henry had been forced to file amended returns. The penalties for unreported millions would be substantial. One afternoon in July, I ran into his mother at the grocery store. She looked uncomfortable. Claire, she said hesitantly, I just want you to know, I had no idea what Henry was doing. I believe you, I said honestly. He made terrible choices. You deserved better. We parted ways. No hard feelings. 3 months after the final judgment, I was settling into my new normal. I'd bought a small townhouse near the school. 2 bedrooms, a little patio where I could paint on weekends. It felt like mine in a way our old house never had. My students noticed the change in me. Miss Morrison, you seem happier, one girl said after class. I am, I told her honestly. Teaching felt meaningful again. I wasn't distracted by financial worries or a failing marriage. I could focus on what mattered. Helping kids discover art, creativity, their own voices. I even started dating, though nothing serious. Just coffee with a nice guy from the gym. Dinner with someone I met at a gallery opening. I wasn't in a hurry. I was enjoying rediscovering myself. Veronica called one afternoon with news. Thought you'd want to know. Henry filed for bankruptcy protection. I wasn't surprised. Between the IRS penalties, the legal fees, the sanctions, and losing his business investors, he'd run out of money fast. The bankruptcy won't affect your settlement, Veronica assured me. That's protected under the divorce decree. But it means he's officially broke. The man who'd hidden $10.5 million had lost everything through his own greed. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt nothing. He was my past. I was focused on my future. A year after that first hearing, I stood on a balcony. Not the one where Henry had plotted. This was my balcony in my townhouse, overlooking a small garden I was cultivating. It was evening. The sun was setting orange and pink over the city. I held a glass of wine and thought about how much had changed. My life was stable now. Secure. Peaceful. The settlement had given me financial freedom I'd never imagined. I paid off my student loans. Put money away for retirement. I could afford to travel, to take art classes, to live without constant worry. But more than money, I'd gained something else. Confidence. I'd stood up for myself. I'd fought back against someone who tried to erase me financially. I'd won because I documented everything, learned what I needed to learn, and didn't give up. My phone buzzed. A text from my colleague Amy. Dinner tomorrow? Want to hear about your trip to Italy? I just returned from 2 weeks in Tuscany, taking art tours, painting landscapes, living the life I'd always dreamed about. I texted back. Yes. 7 p.m. Another message came in from Frank. Saw your interview in the Teacher's Magazine. Well done. I'd given an interview about financial literacy for educators. The article had struck a chord. I finished my wine and went inside. The legal community had taken notice of my case. Frank told me it was being cited in other divorce proceedings involving cryptocurrency. Veronica used it as a teaching example in her forensic accounting courses. The Morrison case, they called it. My name attached to precedent that would help other people. That felt good. My pain had purpose. I testified at a legislative hearing about cryptocurrency disclosure requirements in divorce cases. Lawmakers were drafting new rules to prevent the kind of hiding Henry had attempted. My story helped shape those laws. You're making a real difference, the committee chair told me. Thank you for your courage. Meanwhile, Henry faded into obscurity. I heard he was working at a tech company doing basic IT support. His startup dreams were dead. His reputation destroyed. He lived quietly, probably still dealing with IRS payment plans and bankruptcy consequences. I didn't keep tabs on him. My focus was forward. Always forward. I started volunteering with a women's financial literacy nonprofit, teaching classes on basic investing, understanding assets, protecting yourself in relationships. My story inspired others to ask questions, to stay aware, to not blindly trust. You saved my life, one woman told me after a seminar. I just found out my husband has secret accounts. Because of your story, I know what to do. That made everything worth it. The final chapter of my story isn't about Henry at all. It's about me. On a sunny morning in September, exactly 18 months after he lied in that courtroom, I stood in my new art studio. I'd rented studio space downtown, a dream I'd deferred for years because we couldn't afford it. Now I could. Now I did. I was working on a series of paintings about transformation, butterflies emerging from cocoons, phoenix rising from ashes. Obvious metaphors maybe, but they felt right. My phone rang. Veronica. Hey Claire. Remember that hardware wallet from Henry's safe deposit box? Of course. We just found another wallet he tried to hide. Small amount, maybe 20,000. The IRS investigation uncovered it. Since it's marital assets from the covered period, you're entitled to your percentage. Want me to handle the paperwork? Yes, I said. Even small amounts mattered. But more than that, it meant the system was working. After we hung up, I returned to my painting. Bold strokes of orange and red. A phoenix spreading its wings. Henry had tried to make me invisible. He'd hidden millions, lied under oath, and planned to leave me with nothing. But he'd underestimated two things. First, he'd underestimated me. The clueless wife who turned out to be smarter than he thought. Who learned everything she needed to know. Who documented every piece of evidence. Who fought back with patience and precision. Second, he'd underestimated the blockchain itself. The very technology he thought would hide him ended up exposing everything. Every transaction recorded. Every wallet traced. Every lie documented in permanent, unchangeable code. He tried to erase me financially. The blockchain made sure he couldn't erase himself. I stepped back from my painting satisfied. The phoenix looked fierce. Powerful. Free. Just like me.